You're known for that.
Hey, welcome everyone to our 8th episode of our Partnership Ecosystems Improvement Series. Today we will dive into partner recruitment. This is part 1 for partner recruitment, and today we'll discuss creating your ideal partner profile. We hope this discussion will provide you with the insights you need to find and engage your ideal partner. Joining us today, as always, we have Gilles Esposito. Gilles has worked in channel partnerships and alliances for 20 plus years. He's worked for distributors, vendors, and partners, and brings a 360-degree view to the conversation on partner ecosystems. Our fearless leader, Carlo Breda. Carlo has spent nearly 3 decades in the channel. He's passionate about partnerships and how companies can optimize the power of their partner ecosystems. My name is Aaron Solomon. I am the Director of Operations here at Gorilla, work to manage channel sales and marketing programs for a variety of vendors and help several build their channels from the ground up. So let's jump right in. The ideal partner profile. Carlo, love to start with you on this as all of the partners that you've worked with and Gorilla has worked with over the years. What's the kind of the first area that you direct some of the vendors that we work with when they're done kind of building their channel and they've got their channel program in place and they don't have any partners. So how do they find the right partners that are going to fit their program?
Thanks, Aaron. So this is, it's a really interesting point, and it's something I've really put a lot of sweat, blood, and tears over the 3 decades that you mentioned. The original company was really formed on the back of a need for partner recruitment from multiple technology vendors. It's been a reality that has never stopped. Partner recruitment is something that has to be ongoing all the time. You can never say, well, I've done it. I've now recruited my X amount of partners. There has to be a strategy behind it, which we discussed. There's some capacity mapping to work out how many partners you might need. You need to take into account Pareto's rule and when finally defining how many partners you want to go for. And then, of course, you come to this point. You're pretty much ready to go to market and to recruit partners. Now, defining the ideal partner program is the ideal partner profile is absolutely key because it's your key to success. You as a vendor would know what kind of partners would be needed. Research is usually beneficial to really define the parameters and the profile of the ideal partner. And then, of course, I think one point that is often forgotten is there may be more than one ideal partner profile for any one vendor, depending on your go-to-market strategy overall. So, for example, if you're really into the federal business, then the profile of partner and the qualifications to be an ideal partner would be somewhat different. They may have to have different contract capabilities than a regular commercial partner, et cetera, et cetera. So you may want to have, for example, an ideal partner profile that defines a transactional partner in the federal space. You might want to have an ideal partner profile that defines what a transactional partner in general would look like. And then let's not forget that nowadays the whole partner ecosystem has become immensely complex, with so many different varieties of companies that have joined the whole concept of an ecosystem. So there are many partners that are not transactional but are incredibly valuable, and I'm talking about referral partners. A referral partner would have a different ideal partner profile. In addition to that, you may have implementing partners or just consulting partners. You may have OEM partners. And so, what I think is really important is to discriminate this, brainstorm it thoroughly internally. Bring in a consultant is always a good idea, and then have a very clear definition of what an ideal partner profile might be for each of the go-to-market motions that you have in mind. And then once you have an ideal partner profile, the next phase would start to kick in, of course, which is the whole concept of partner scorecarding. Does that answer your question on partner profiling, on the ideal partner profile to start with, Aaron? Before I digress on
Yeah.
the things.
No, to start with, I think that's a great start. Love to dig in a little bit more on, now, you mentioned several different kind of partners that would be, from transactional to referral, consulting, and each has their different set of capabilities and value that they can bring to the table. And as one vendor, obviously we're going to show your value to each one of these different partner sets. But from a vendor perspective, where are you going to start? There's obviously from a graphic variables, geographic variables to keep in mind. So you mentioned the scorecard. So what's a good starting point for the vendors as they begin to build out that ideal partner profile, and it may be several spots for each different type of partner.
Yeah, so to that effect, actually, I have a couple of slides that might just help to sort of paint the picture, to tell the story. So I'm going to try sharing my screen, and hopefully it will work first time around.
So while Carlo is putting this up, let me throw a little bit of a wrench here. I think before you start talking about all that, you got to understand that most companies, at least that I've seen or that I'm aware of, um, go through the partner recruitment process as a natural follow-up of their channel strategy, and usually don't create a separate plan for just the recruitment. And I do believe that's a mistake. I think you need to be recruitment is key. Obviously, you may have the most beautiful channel program, but if you don't have a good success in your recruitment efforts, and that's defined by multiple things, the word success here, it may be a waste of your time. So, and you're going to have sooner or later to go back to that when you're going to realize, for example, that a vast majority of your partners are not producing to the extent of what you're expecting, providing your expectation are realistic. So for that, you need a plan, right? And the plan, so Carlo covered a little bit about that plan by defining what we call the channels. So the channels here has nothing to do with the channel as we call it, like the act of partnering with indirect sales motions. The channels are all the things that Carl was talking about, like federal is a channel, partners that would be very specifically keyed to specific industries. For example, in manufacturing, if you want to deal with ICS or industrial control systems, they have to have some certification, qualification, understanding of some space like SCADA or CMMC or those type of things and all that. Those are going to be variables that you're going to need to identify and Carlo will talk about the scorecarding that you need to. For the federal partner, for example, you may want to have some that are specific to, I don't know, the Air Force or this or that, or some other part of government. State and local is different with different vehicles, those type of things. So those are all the channels you may look at. And within the channels, you have the geos as well, as you talked about, Aaron, which are important. You don't do business in France the same way you do business in North America or South America or Asia Pac and that kind of stuff. So you're going to have to plan for that and have partners that are capable of tackling those specific geos and or specific industries if these are some of the channels you want to pursue. So as you're going to build that plan and as you're going to start defining what is the set As Carlo mentioned, it's usually not one ideal partner profile. It's a set of ideal partner profile, but it can be only one. It depends. If you're a startup, you have only one product addressing only one industry and need only one specific type of partner, that's completely possible. But over time, hopefully, as your company develops, you will need different channels and therefore different ideal partner profiles. But you need to have a plan, and we'll go into details of that in the next session. But today, this is what we want to talk about, right? So how do you define your ideal partner profile? And there's a ton of variables, and we're not going to go through them because it depends on on what it is that you're selling, what it is that you're promoting, and that you want your partners to promote, how you want them to do that, and so on and so forth. That's number one of your recruitment plan, defining your channels. From there, defining what your ideal partner profiles are going to be, and then you're going to move into and I'll let Carlo tackle this one because that's really a specialty, to go into the profiling. Then you're going to need to find partners out there. So that's easy to find. There's a number of free sources that help you identify who are the 2,000 top VARs in the US, the MSSPs, and so on and so forth, right? You're going to be able to find this information either freely or at a cost if you want to buy a list and this type of thing. And from there, you're going to need to extract out of those lists the ones that fit the most your ideal partner profile through a scorecarding system and all that. And then we will start at this point the actual art of recruitment, which will be covered, as I said before, in the next session. So I just wanted to add this, that it's really important to have a plan, which will also include the element of communication, right? How are you going to reach out to those partners, right? Besides the ones you already know, with whom you already have relationships and all that, that's obvious, but there's all the ones you've never heard about or you don't have any contact there, how you reach out to these people and all that. This is all going to be part of your of the plan, of the recruitment plan. But the message here is have a recruitment plan where you define all those things, rather than go in the dark and knock on every door. And every time somebody's happy to listen to you, you want to recruit them, and then realize that you're going to have 10% of your partners a year down the road that are going to generate 90% of your revenue, which is a situation that unfortunately happens very, very often in the partnering industry. So.
Yeah, thank you for that, Gilles. I think that just adds a lot of color, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, if I'll go back to my share. Just a matter of interest, when I share, do you still see the pictures?
Right now, I only see you. I don't see you. I don't see what you're sharing.
Okay, I'll go back and share it. There you go. 1 second, please. All right. Okay. So
we got it. Yeah.
You see it? Perfect. Okay. So this, I just really wanted to give you an idea of typically, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've tried many different ways of recruiting partners, with our company Gorilla, independently, with vendors, and I've witnessed vendors doing it in many different ways. Predominantly, the two most common ways that vendors go about it are having a web form for partners to fill in and kind of self-apply. And then go through the process of becoming a partner, kind of through a direct and personal process of the web. And the most common one is trade shows. Now, I just wanted to be a little bit critical about both, because both of these methods don't really give you the opportunity for the lengthy due diligence and the real focus in terms of really understanding and choosing the partners that really suit the business, rather than the partners that happen to walk by your booth, or the partners that happen to go on your internet webpage and fill in the form. I can give you a horror story. Just a few years ago, not many, one of the big giants in robotic process automation found themselves with literally thousands of partners having applied, because it was a very hot technology at that point in time, especially. And so they had an incredibly large amount, a pool of potential partners, which they knew really nothing about. And so the problem was, where do we start? We've got 6,000 partners that have signed up. Are they the right partners? Do they have the right skill set? How costly would it be for us to engage with them? And if they don't have the right skill set, then it might be very costly. And they just that became a massive problem all of it on its own. Trade shows are a similar culprit because of the randomness of it all, because of the fact that you might end up striking a partnership agreement with a company that doesn't, you don't really have the right preliminaries, the right prerogatives there to have a successful long-term relationship with. So what I prefer is what Gilles was mentioning and Aaron before, the idea of defining very clearly what your ideal partner profile is, and then to develop key ideas of what are the dimensions that really matter to you. Now, I just want to prefix that by a caveat that every company will have a completely different set of characteristics that they want to score in their scorecard. But typically, generally, these are the characteristics that you should consider. And I'll make this a little bit bigger as I go down along it. I'll start off with the left-hand side column. Firmographic information. You want to really, let me make it a bit bigger. What kind of partner are they? You want to clearly understand their business model. You want to know if they're an MSP, an MSSP, if they're a VAR, what kind of VAR are they? Are they transactional VAR, or are they more of a value solutions oriented VAR? The biggest mistake that a vendor can make is to consider that everybody's in one bucket, and to treat, for example, value-oriented VARs as you would treat a transactional volume-oriented VAR, right? So these are little points of discrimination that really matter, and they matter because then the engagement process that you build with them will be totally different. And you may need some of both. You may have a use case in your go-to-market plan for transactional type partners, and a different use case or go-to-market scenario where value partners are needed. But you should then recruit separately and have these as very clear, different, distinct paths. You want to consider, of course, the regular firmographic information. Everybody will do that from the get-go, but it's not enough to stop at revenue, location, and how many employees they have. It's very useful to see how a company is growing, what the growth rate looks like. That really gives you an idea of what goes on behind the scenes, what kind of dynamics they have. And today there are many, many tools that enable you to have a visual on that growth rate, ranging from Crunchbase to LinkedIn, for example. I think the regular product and certainly Navigator can give you a lot of insight in how a company is growing. Reputation, track record, and financial stability. So these are important criteria. The financial stability, as you probably all know, you can pick that up from, let's say, Dun & Bradstreet and integrate that data into your prospective universe of target partners. The next thing you really want to look at is the strategic alignment. I mean, everything here on this list is, I think, very important. Strategic alignment, if anything should be more important, maybe that's the one, right? Do the company missions align? Are you aiming in the same, are you traveling in the same direction? Because if you're not, then there's going to be tension from the get-go, right? So there has to be some clarity in terms of whether the company missions are really well aligned, right? Culture, we talk a lot about culture on this series, and that's really important here. Company culture and company values. There has to be it's difficult to match values with values. It's not as easy as just looking on the website or saying, show me your value statements. What are your company values? It's a question of, because rarely will the reality match the desire to have certain values as inculcated and culturally fundamental in the company. But looking getting a feel for that is really important. The more there is a similar culture, the more the companies will gel. It's really not too dissimilar to dating. This is like company dating rather than personal dating, but it's not very different really. Now, understanding also in terms of strategic alignment, do they target the same kind of people? Are their customer types the same kind of customer types that you're looking for? It's a no-brainer, right? But sometimes it has to be evaluated and it has to be scored, and you want to give it a number, right? So in this whole concept of scorecarding, generally, you'll want to have a questionnaire and then have a set of values, right? It could be rates on a 1 to 10 basis or 1 to 5 basis. And then, of course, as with most scorecards, you want to apply a weighting factor. So, you might say, well, having seen all this, the things that really matter to us the most are the cultural fit, or it might be how big their install base is, or something like that. And those elements you will want to weight at a factor of 2x or 3x, depending on how important they are really in your overall assessment and judgment of how valuable a potential partner is to you, right? So do they target the same type of customer? Do they focus on a vertical that is valuable to you? That's again super important, and it's not something that should be overlooked. There should be clarity on the direction that the partner is taking in terms of its verticals and its horizontals. Horizontals meaning are they an SMB oriented shop, or do they do mid-market, or do they do large enterprises, etc., etc. You want to have clarity in terms of what horizontals they go for, and also what specific verticals they are strong at, or that they really want to go into. So a company might be very strong in healthcare, and they might be developing and putting a lot of energy into opening up a pharmaceutical practice, let's say, and that might be really interesting for you because they've got this energy that is being focused into developing a pharmaceutical specialization. So you want to take all of these things into account when you scorecard. Like I said, every scorecard will be individual, and really it'll be your thing that cannot be translated to anybody else. Now, do they have customers that you're interested in from the get-go? It could be that as a vendor yourself, you might say, well, I really, really want to do business with Citibank, or I really want to do business with, I don't know, another bank, or with Walmart, right? So knowing what customers they have in terms of at least the large enterprise customers, is incredibly valuable. And so therefore, if they had the right kind of customers, and a lot of databases, well, not a lot of databases, some databases, including the Gorilla database, will have information as to what their main customers are. No, it won't be filled in every single record, but it will be quite populated. And so therefore you could use that just to actually look for the right kind of partner that already has a relationship with the customer that you're coveting, right? That makes sense. And then you'll want to see how large their install base is. That's an important criteria. Depending again on the type of business, but a company that has a large customer base made up of the type of customers that you really like is, of course, I mean, that's an important criteria. That would, skew the scoring. You probably want to weight that quite importantly in your consideration. And then, how much of your type of business are they already doing? So, for example, if you're in the data center business, do they do a lot of business with, let's say, Lenovo data centers, or on the software side with VMware or with Nutanix? Because if you have a product or solution that is complementary or competitive, of course, going to a partner that is already skilled, that is already a sales machine for that type of specific go-to-market can be very, very important. Of course, these types of organizations are also very difficult to gain their attention. and to have some enough airtime with them to convince them that they should change their business to accommodate your vendor line. That's sometimes a very difficult sell. So again, these are considerations. Ultimately, and I'll jump forward a little bit. What this will give you. In fact, let me go through these questions because these are, I think, important, and then I'll go over to the next big discussion point, which is really, in my opinion, the most important dimensions to consider is how valuable is this potential partner to you, and how easy is this potential partner to recruit. And then your recruitment motions should consider these two parameters very, very carefully. So again, in terms of the sample questions, because I know that a lot of you that are in the business of wanting to recruit partners will be considering, well, what else should I add into my scorecard? What else is important? So I'll be pedantic and go through what I've got here on the screen. So we talked about business alignment. This might be expressed as a percentage. So it might be that they might have 60% of their business might be data center business. If you have a data center solution, then that would make it quite interesting. If the company only had, was very fringe in the data center business and maybe did less than 10%, well, that obviously would score a lot lower, right? And then, of course, the geographic fit, that's a no-brainer. Don't need to discuss that. But the country culture is important. And I added this as an afterthought just now because Gilles mentioned it in the intro. And I thought, yes, it's not just about company culture. You also want to make a consideration as to how compatible the partner would be from a company culture perspective, how easy it would be for you with your existing setup and staff and linguistic capabilities to do business with a particular set of partners that may be from a different region, that might speak just, for instance, only German or only Norwegian or something, and that might create additional complexity. So you also want to consider country culture, because it's not just about the language; it's also about the fact that the stereotypes are to some extent a little bit true. So working with Italians, there's a special way of working with an Italian partner, which is completely different to how you would work with a Dutch or a German partner, for example. So moving on, the engineering and technical capabilities. This is really important because most organizations, there's a real there's an insufficiency in terms of sales engineers that are available and pre-sales engineers. So it's a very, very coveted job function. And so therefore, if you have a fairly complex product, then looking for partners that have sales engineers and pre-sales engineers already that would have potentially the bandwidth to invest in your vendor line, well, that's a huge thing. If a company is really thin on sales engineers and you have a complex product, then you might not want to work with that partner and score that very, very low. Okay. Similarly, do they have a lab? Do they have a process for taking opportunities to proof of concept that aligns more or less with your process? And then, a good look at the complementary and competitive vendors. Ultimately, for a partner relationship to work, the partner needs to have a multiple over your sales number to make it worth their while. So, for example, if they're selling, $100,000 of your software or hardware, in order for it to be really interesting for them, they ought to be able to sell $300,000 worth of services, implementation services, training services, and so on and so forth. Or at least have the possibility for a drag of complementary products that are high margin. So these are the additional complexities. So when you actually look at a potential partner relationship, you want to be really prepared. The more you're prepared, the more hard work like this you do at the beginning, the higher your payoff will be afterwards. Because remember that it might cost you, a couple of months of labor to get to a point whereby you have your partners well scorecarded, but the cost of developing relationships with partners that are not suited from the get-go is a massive massive multiplier on in terms of waste of money. You'll end up really draining your organization when you really don't need to, by being prepared in the first place. So I'm of the school of thought that it's really worthwhile to be really prepared, to do things slowly, diligently, and in a way that is really well thought out. It'll make the whole experience so much more pleasant for everybody, because the partners will be well aligned, and they will be the right partners, that they'll be happy to do business with you. You're not going to have to convince them to swallow to swallow a product that they might not be really keen on at the end of the day. So so when I'm looking at complementary and competitive products, that's really important, because again, if they are really strong with a competitor brand, it might be really hard for you to displace them. If they center their business around a competitor brand, well, they might be a phenomenal partner if you can win them over at the other vendor's expense, but it might take you a long time. But it might be worth it. You might want to set up a 5-year plan even to convince that particular partner to switch over to you, right? These things don't happen overnight. It might be a 3-year plan, but sometimes you might want to consider the very long cycle for some of the very strategic, highly strategic partner relationships that are maybe very difficult to win over straight away. Sometimes the big GSIs are like that. I see many vendors that from the get-go they say, "Yeah, I'd love to set up a partnership with Accenture," but getting the bandwidth from a company like Accenture or Deloitte or anything like that is very hard. Even when you have a friend that works there, even then it's really hard, because if you have a friend that works at Accenture, all you'll get is his or her sphere of influence, which is usually it won't be enough. These relationships need to work at different levels of management and at different levels of managerial alignment, and so therefore it takes time. With some of the big ones, it takes time. With some of the complex ones, it takes time, but it will be worth it. So we look at the drag potential. We determine the levels of loyalty that a partner has towards a particular brand, or a frustration. And that's a big one. Very often you will pick it up in the news, and you'll know that a competitor is frustrating their channel for whatever reason. We've had incidents in the past. We've seen vendors frustrate their channel because of creating channel conflict or not managing channel conflict correctly, or frustrating channel partners by interfering with their direct sales forces, or it could be any number of different reasons. Just recently, this is just public information that's on all the news, but for example, the fact that Kaseya bought Datto is creating a lot of unhappiness within that channel, because it happens a lot when there's an acquisition. That changeover is not always very smooth, and it creates an opportunity for a competitor to dig in and actually win opportunities. And then we have sales play alignment. You might want to find out how many, for example, if you're in a SaaS business, how many SaaS specific salespeople your potential partner has. How many of those are skilled at renewals, if renewals is an important element for you. How effective is their marketing to sales handover machine, right? The way that they actually manage the lead process. A lot of these questions will be, obviously, they won't be available on the internet. They won't be available on the database. A lot of these questions you'll have to find out by research, by primary research, by talking to people, by having meetings, maybe by engaging a market research company that can actually do this for you as a focus group, or other method of primary research. But again, it's all these are well worth doing. And then of course, how capable are they from a marketing perspective? Do they have a marketing team? Are they good at social marketing? Are they good at inbound? Are they good at content marketing? A lot of that you'll be able to see just as a user interacting with their website and seeing how they respond. But yeah, that's actually quite important. Even if they don't have a great marketing team, it doesn't matter, provided that they're open-minded towards the idea of marketing together with a vendor. Uh, in our experience, partners that are open-minded to co-marketing with a vendor are the ones that really succeed and deliver tremendous results. Some partners are not open-minded, and they will say, "No, I will never co-market with a vendor. No, I do my own marketing. I don't want to have any suggestions, any help from the vendor." And those relationships, will tend to frustrate the overall picture. And then finally, willingness. Are they willing to partner with you? Are they willing to engage in new customer acquisition sales motions? Are they willing to cross-sell their solutions into your customer base? Because if they are, then from the get-go, you can offer them the opportunity to support them both on sales motions relating to new customer acquisition and on sales motion regarding and facilitating cross-selling into their existing install base. And with that's the easiest, that's the low-hanging fruit. So finding partners that feel that the strength of their potential relationship with you is so good, and that the potential trust can build up quickly to that level, those are phenomenal partnerships, and you want to score them again, in proportion to commensurate to these considerations. So with that, yeah, did you want to stop me there for a second?
Yeah, before we go to the next slide, Terry had a great question on
Yeah.
around verticals and horizontals, and how long would you say you suggest an organization keep pushing, targeting a vertical or a horizontal before moving on or add further verticals to their portfolio?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. Let me just stop the share a second. Well, it's okay. I'll respond with this background. It's fine. So I think what I have seen work, what we have done successfully for some large corporate clients in the past, is what we call battlefield mapping. And battlefield mapping is when you look at all of the when you segment the market really in terms of a matrix, like a little bit like what you see there on this scatter plot, with the little
Right.
squares, right? And so imagine that on the one hand, you have all of the verticals listed, and on the horizontal axis, for example, you have on the one side you have the verticals, on the other you have the horizontals. So therefore, you have very small cells that represent, for example, enterprise level pharmaceutical, then mid-market level pharmaceutical, and then SMB level pharmaceutical, right? You could even put retail pharmaceutical, right? So these would be the 3 or 4 subsets inside of each of these little squares. And then what you could then do is that you could color code these squares to show you could have like a dynamic switch. Now, on the one hand, it shows the growth of that subvertical in terms of annual growth rates. And on the other hand, you're showing the IT spend of that segment of the market. So it could be that when you do your research correctly, it could be that you'll find that, for example, the IT spend in mid-market pharmaceutical is really high, but the IT spend in enterprise pharmaceutical is proportionately, well, it would be higher. But in some cases, it's not. In some cases, not, because the technology might be saturated. Most of the companies will already have all the latest gadgets. And so the opportunity will be then bigger in mid-market, right? So this is what we call battlefield mapping. And what you do is that you then have all of these little squares. And then what you do is that you use that really to drive your whole go-to-market strategy, in the sense that you look for partners that are especially skilled in that area, pharmaceutical mid-market in a particular geography. right? There'll be different spreadsheets, one for each geography, parsing the market in that way, right? And so clearly, what you would want to do once you've done that work is to go for the low hanging fruit. And what you do is that you would stack rank it, and you would start off from the market that has the greatest potential, the greatest growth rate, the greatest IT spend for your type of technology. And then you would visualize which are all the companies on the database that belong to that sector, and that would be your
Mhm.
primary market. And then you'd find partners that align to that, and you'd use those partners as means to get to that market. And then once you've done the first in the stack ranking, once you've done the first, you go to the second, you go to the third. And then, this is very hypothetical. I mean, it's a good question, but it's very hypothetical. You'd probably
Right.
go through that market until you felt that you have a good that you're not that you achieved optimal effectiveness, if you like, in terms of penetrating that market. And when you do, it depends on your resources as well. If you're a big company
True.
and you got the money, you can go for 10 markets or even 20 markets at a time, and then rotate and again go to the next lower, next lower, next lower. So that's I hope that helps answer that question.
So I'm going to add a
Yeah.
little bit to that to that, because I don't think that's exactly what Thierry was asking. Uh, uh, he was specifically asking for the trigger point in time. So when do you decide to either drop a vertical for an organization and switch to another one? So that's one question. Or when to add one. And that's completely different, actually, right? Adding is easier than dropping and switching to something completely new, because that means you're gonna either you've been extremely unsuccessful in a specific vertical and you need to switch to a new one. But in the other case, it's adding to a vertical. Let's say your company deals mostly exclusively in financial services, and you think at some point that it might be good for you to go into healthcare and life sciences, for example. Uh, the trigger point for me is the methodology to do it is what Carlo just described. The trigger point depends on two things: your internal and your external capabilities. And I'm talking about external capabilities here because we're talking about channel and indirect sales, right? Working through partners. So as Carlo was saying, if you have partners for the external part, if you have partners that you've originally onboarded and started a partnership with them based on your financial services business, which is doing well or not well, it doesn't matter at this point, right? You're going to have to add variables to your scorecarding to identify the ones that are now also capable of evolving within the healthcare and life sciences space. And that's going to be a certain amount of things and all that. And you're going to go through your partners and try to identify which ones are capable of doing this. Since you're partnering, you're not considering them an extension of your sales team. You're partnering with them. You're going to have discussion with them and put on the table the fact that you're going to move to that new vertical, and what do they think it would take to the solution that they've already sold for you into the financial space to be able to get there. More likely than not, the trigger is going to come from them. When you're first going to present them that you're doing so great in financial services, but now you want to move to healthcare. Before you think of that, they're probably going to tell you, well, your stuff is really good, and we should promote it into the healthcare space as well, or something like this, right? So that's going to be your external trigger point. But again, you have to have a qualifier at some point that they're capable of doing this if you're leveraging an external channel, which obviously is what we're talking about here. This is not enough. Unfortunately, you also need to have those capabilities internally. So if we talk about healthcare, for example, there's regulations like HIPAA and other things and all that, and there's frameworks and there's a bunch of things that you're going to need to be aware of before getting into this market. And again, your good partners, if you want to go into this market, they will push those in your face and say, are you capable of doing this? Do you have these type of certification? Like, for example, if you want software in medical devices, there's a couple certification, NIST certification that you're going to need to have for your software to be able to be onboarded into medical devices and some classes of medical devices. And if you don't have that, you won't be able to sell anything because nobody will buy from your partner your product if you don't have the certification. You need to know the certification cost to get them between 500K and $2 million to get certified. So there's an investment plan and all that. So all those things, I'm just giving you one example, but if you go into ICS or operational technology and all that, if you want to work for the government, you're going to need to have CMMC. On the other hand, you're going to need to understand SCADA, and so on and so forth. So there's a bunch of things that are internal as well to your company that are not only dependent on budget or time or bandwidth or size of your channel team or that kind of stuff, but that are going to impact product, legal, and so on and so forth. And so it's very hard to answer your question, Thierry, because there's again a lot of variables depending on, if you want to cut and switch to a different vertical. That's extremely difficult, especially if you have a run rate, or if you just want to add verticals to the scope of what you want to do, right? Same with federal. If one day you say, man, I mean, there's that huge market in the federal space and all that, you're depending on what you're selling. Maybe you're going to need to have some of your ACs that have a clearance, a security clearance, to be able to help your partner pitch in front of people when they're going to present a project that has some level of secrecy, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of variables, and you can answer, the when as a defined set of time. It all depends on your external resources, so your partner, and your internal resources to be able to tackle this new vertical, because if you don't speak the language and are not ready for it, you're not going to go very far. So
excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That really frames it nicely. So let me just go back 1 second to the other thing, which is just here.
Thank you.
Oops. Yep. Sure. There you go. Yeah. So this kind of really frames and sort of completes the discussion around the partner scorecarding. So ideal partner profile first. Once you have that, you can develop the criteria for the scorecard, the weighting system, and then once you have that, you can go ahead and score. When you've done the scoring, the output, what you get is basically this, which is a scatter plot that shows how the companies in your prospective partner portfolio of potential partners that you could recruit, where do they sit, right? So there's a median that is taken in terms of these two really, for me, really important dimensions. One is the value to you as a company of a potential partner, and one is how easy they appear to be able to be recruited. So how positive are they about you already? To what extent do they already lean and visualize, how the relationship with you would be successful and healthy. And so therefore, when you look at a scatter plot, you're able to then divide your database into these 4 quadrants. This one here is, as you see here on the background, high value, easy to recruit. So these are your really the top ones that you should really focus on, because why? They're of high value. There's a very good strategic alignment. They align on, sales engineering. They align on culture. They align on a lot of things. They align because they're the right verticals that are growing. The strategy that you might have to go for a particular vertical aligns with theirs. So there's all that. And they're also showing that they're keen to pursue the relationship. They are showing that if they have already a competitive relationship, that they can actually compartmentalize that and work very effectively, never regardless of that, etc. So they would end up in this high value and high ease of recruitment. These are your top ones. Then, of course, you have the ones that are of high value but hard to recruit, right? These are the ones that you want to sort of park into the long-term strategy game. Because if they're going to be valuable for you, if the scorecarding has decreed that they will be the right kind of partners, then they're worth pursuing. But there you want to develop a different kind of recruitment motion, something that is very soft, very gentle, that, where the name of the game is patience. And you look at winning those relationships over a longer period of time. And then, of course, you have these folks here that are of, let's say, lesser value, but really easy to recruit. So again, that will be up to the judgment of your company's management and your channel chief. Is it worth going for these ones? Do you want to get volume? Maybe you do. And the fact that they are not in the highest quadrant for value doesn't mean that they're rubbish, right? Especially if you select them from the top end there. And then, of course, these are the ones that you probably don't want to bother with, because these are the companies that would be hard to recruit and also show relatively low value to you as a corporation. So that's kind of the benefit of taking this approach. Taking the scorecarding approach is the fact that you can actually be very pinpointed and very precise about the kind of relationships that you want. And you go through a process that will help you to strategize and develop your recruitment methodology that really applies to the type of partners that you want to bring on. So in summary, I have this little summary here. Make it a bit bigger. There you go. So this is really at high level. In terms of what do I do next? The way I look at it is clearly you cannot go in and have that level of very intimate scorecarding with everybody. Yeah, it would just be really too costly and it'll take too long. So you probably want to do a first level of automated scorecarding and selection and filtering, if you like. So if you take an overall database, let's say that you're interested in Microsoft partners that do security. Now, there's probably about 5,000 or 6,000 of those that are good, that do security in any particular sort of big geography. Now, what you can do is that you can actually do an initial level of selection through database filtering. So you can pull out the ones that target your verticals, that target your horizontals, that have the right kind of customers, that have the right kind of technology skills. We at Gorilla, we have access to this type of database. And so we're able to do that high level scorecarding. And that can then reduce the overall huge number that might be 5,000 or 6,000 to a much more manageable, let's say, top 250. Then that top 250 or top 150 or top 100 can actually, you can take that to the next level and go for the detailed information gathering and go for the in-depth meetings. These could be in the format of focus groups. These could be in the format of primary research meetings, other kinds of events where you gather them together. But you try to have individual time because you really want to talk about the potential for a relationship and have fairly open meetings with them. That will then help you to define further how they actually ought to plot out. Once you've done that, you will have the stack ranking. So you like before, you will have these stack ranked not only by quadrants, but actually you will know which is your number one company to recruit, which is your number two company to recruit, and so on and so forth. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention at the top end, we at Gorilla also have AI tools now that lend themselves to this kind of filtering, both at the firmographic level and also at the individual stakeholder level within the partner companies. So you can look for folks that have the right kind of even psychographic type of match with your type of technology. And this can be very, very powerful indeed. So all said and done, the next thing is that you go through the recruitment motions. We'll go deeper into that on our next session. And then once you're recruited, the partner, the scorecarding doesn't necessarily end there, because then what starts is a whole new set of procedures to have dynamic scorecarding. But dynamic scorecarding is more about measuring the performance of the partner in time. When you have dynamic scorecarding, you're able to have, for example, exception reports that will flag changes in a partner's capabilities or performance. And these changes will then trigger action from the channel account manager or partner account manager to intervene. For example, if a partner has been, selling at a fairly regular level and then becomes much more intermittent, that should raise an alert, and you should look into that. So that's a benefit of dynamic scorecarding, but it is not the purpose of today's webinar to discuss dynamic scorecarding. I just wanted to give you a little sneak peek at the idea that scorecarding doesn't end when the partner is recruited. So I'll just pause there, guys.
Great. Yeah, and I think it's a really important topic that the scorecarding doesn't end once the partner is recruited. We've seen, excuse me, in several of our programs, how we continue to build and the partners build capabilities, right? As you continue to work with the partners or the distributors are working with the partners, as the partners grow and bring on maybe more complementary or competitive products, they may become more favorable or less favorable for your program over time. So I'm glad we were able to touch on that. It was on my notes for today, how dynamic that scorecarding can be and really should be over time. So you can, these partner organizations continue to evolve just like the vendors do with their set of products and services. So, all right. Gilles, any final thoughts to bring us home in our last 4 minutes?
We'll probably cover a little bit the dynamic scorecarding in a much later session when we'll talk about how you manage your ecosystem on a daily basis or a regular basis. The dynamic scorecarding is much easier to do than this one, because at this point, right, you're going to get a lot of tangible information, such as like number of opportunities they place and the revenue they get, the net new logos, the net you as a vendor, and so on and so forth, all those kind of things. And usually it's something you're going to be using, just like you use a price earning ratio when you value stocks versus the other from the same industry. You use those dynamic scorecarding to position your partner versus your ecosystem, right? And you use that doing QBR and that kind of stuff with the brass of the partner organization you're partnering with whom you're going to be doing those QBRs or reviews or that kind of stuff. So yes, definitely something you need to do on a regular basis. But again, to put everybody at ease, it becomes much easier once they are a partner, because then you have access to a lot more tangible data, right? At this point, that is not only what they say or what you can, discover or assume, but that is factual data. So then there's no more dance. It's the real thing. So, but definitely something that needs to be done on a regular basis. Just like recruitment, as Carlo mentioned at the beginning, needs to be done on a regular basis, because you will always be in some kind of a Pareto space where a small number of your partners are doing a large number of your revenue, and you'll continuously be aiming at recruiting partner that reinforce the activities versus just lay dormant on your website and do nothing. So
yeah,
that's it. Nothing else to add at this point.
Awesome.
Looking for seeing everybody for the second part of this, which will be more tactical at this point. So
yes.
And this time we finished on the button, Aaron.
We sure did. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. We're right on the right on time. So just want to thank everybody again for joining us today. Again, another interesting topic, great discussion. So the recording will be available on our website at gorillaict.com under our events tab, as well as on our YouTube channel. So connect with us, connect and follow us on LinkedIn, and join us again, like Gilles mentioned, in July for part 2 of this discussion around partner recruitment. So there's so much more to learn and continue to discuss. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.